welcome to Berkshire Guitar Amplifier Repairs. Stuart Smith with you as always from Reading in England, and on the bench today it's a Marshall Valve State 2000, and the problem with this is it's blowing the main fuse in the plug top. So I think he said 10 amp fuse, which is a very high fuse to have in the plug top, but anyway it's blowing that, and he's replaced that once and it's blown it again. So we're just going to take the chassis out and have a look, see what's gone on. It could be something relatively simple, or it could be something a bit more serious like the mains transformer, short circuit primary or something like that. So we'll get it powered up on my current limiting lamp and just double check that the customer's right and it is pulling too much current. Then we'll whip the chassis out and have a little look, see if we can see what's causing it, and see if we can repair it for him. And if you haven't seen it before, here's my little current setup here. I have a light bulb there in series with the mains, which I can switch in via the lamp switch here. That puts the bulb in series, and of course if it pulls too much current or if there's a short circuit, the bulb will light up fully. And then I've got a variac which I can wind up the voltage on. So I think we'll just put the voltage on half, the lamp in circuit, and turn it on and see what happens. Oh, it's on already. Well, that's interesting. So we're on, and it's not pulling too much current, and it hasn't blown any fuses. That's interesting. I thought that might have blown a fuse straight away. Well, let's just turn the. I can hear the fan spinning up in the. Oh, we're on full power there. That's very strange. Fan's a bit noisy. Right, well I think I'll just plug a speaker in the back and a guitar in the front and see if this amp is in fact working. Right, that's everything plugged in, and it seems to be okay. Oh, seems to be alright. Sounds lovely. These valve state amps are very good value for money. You can pick them up for next to nothing on eBay, and they sound really pretty good. But back to this repair, it seems that the amp is working okay. He did give me his mains lead, which I've got tied around here, and I haven't used it, so I suppose we ought to plug this in and see if there's anything wrong with the mains lead, but I'd be a little bit surprised. It's a standard mains lead. But anyway, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to turn the amp off and take out my mains lead, plug in his mains lead, and plug it in. See if I've got the lamp in circuit. I think I'll turn the variac down just in case. Turn it on. Oh, that's interesting. So okay, well, that's not working at all. So my guess is that it's still got the blown fuse in the plug top. That would be my guess on that. So let's take the top off the plug. Oh no, we don't need to take the top off the plug. It's a moulded one. So let's just whip the fuse out and see if that's actually blown. It is indeed a 10 amp. I have no idea why he wants a 10 amp fuse in there. And it's open circuit, that. So I'll just pop a new fuse in there. 3 amp is what we need in there, not 10. So we'll pop a 3 amp fuse in there and give that another go. Plug it in. Turn the variac down to 100 volts, turn it on. The light has come on. I fully expect this to work, and indeed it is working. Okay, now I'm just working out whether to take the chassis out and have a look inside. Obviously, the only reason I wouldn't do that is to save the customer money. I could just phone him and say, "Seems to be working to me. Do you want to take it again?" And he might say, "Yep, why not? I'll take it as it is." Or I could say to him, "Look, it's working. Do you want me to take the chassis out and do a full inspection and all that sort of stuff?" Which is obviously a bit more money. I happen to notice that the gain control is very scratchy, so that could do with a service. So it wouldn't hurt to take the chassis out and have a look. But anyway, let me see what he wants to do. I think that's probably the next order of play. Okay, I've had a word with the customer and he would like me to take the chassis out and do a service and just double check there's nothing wrong inside. So we'll do that, which will give us a chance to have a look inside the amp anyway. So let's get it out of the case and I'll join you in a moment. Okay, welcome to the inside of this amp, which I've seen many times, and you'll notice it's mainly a solid state. It's basically all done with op amps, operational amplifiers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 op amps do all the heavy lifting, and they've bunged a valve in to give it that open quotes valve sound, close quotes, which may or may not give it a valve sound, I don't know. And annoyingly on these amps they have these sealed pots, so you can't really clean them very easily. I have successfully cleaned these by dribbling some deoxit down the shaft, so since only one of these pots is dirty, I might try that trick on there. It's generally quite dirty and dusty. Look, there's a lot of dirt on the board and around, and there's the fan, which is a very cheap little thing, and they squeal, so I'm going to use a scalpel just to lift that label. I'll put the amp on its back and put a little drop of oil on there, and that will probably cure that. Little mains transformer doesn't need to be very big, there's not much power in this amp. And the actual power heavy lifting, instead of a couple of valves, is done by one of these integrated circuit audio amplifiers. That'll start with TDA something or other, and it'll be like a 50 watt audio amplifier IC. Rather amazing really, isn't it, that you can get 50 watts or something out of a little IC like that. Very clever really. And then there's the back board here, which has all the FX send and returns and stuff, so I think we'll clean all these jacks up. I think the first thing I'm going to do is just get my little vacuum cleaner out and give this a vacuum out. It's not too bad, but we'll get all this dirt off. But we don't see anything in here, do we, which implies that a 10 amp fuse has blown. So I have no idea what's gone on here. He did mention that he found a chain, like a piece of jewellery chain in the vent here, which he fished out. So he's wondering if the person who borrowed it or whatever, I don't know who, a chain went through there. Now that would have come through and could possibly have touched the board here somewhere and caused the fuse to blow. So that's just a possibility. I don't see anything. I think sort of unlikely that, but who knows. By the way, a little bit of historical interest. When they were designing equipment back in the 50s and the 60s, they had usually fairly big vents here. You couldn't get your finger in, but you could get, maybe you could get your little finger in a few millimeters or something. They were like double the width of these. But over the years they made them finer and finer and finer until eventually they started putting actual mesh across here. And I had a safety expert working for me once when I ran my electronics business, and I said, why have they gone to all the trouble putting mesh here instead of just having a grill? He said, aha, I know the reason for that. Women used to lean over the television to dust the back of it, and their chain would go through the grill here, loop into the chassis, touch the HT, and apparently several women were killed. They were electrocuted. So the average gold chain is quite fine, of course, so no matter how fine you make these slits, the chain will go down. So they started putting a very fine mesh across the back of television sets. So I thought you might be interested to know that. It usually takes a few deaths before the next level of safety is implemented. Anyway, I'll get the vacuum out, we'll give this a little sweep out. Yes, well, as always, that doesn't really do a lot because the dirt is kind of greasy and sticks onto the board, so the vacuum doesn't get it off. But it's not too bad in there. I think I'm going to do the fan next, and I'll show you how I do that because you might want to know how to do this. Okay, so here's the fan here, and in order to lubricate it we need to lift this label here which is stuck on the back. Oh, that lifted actually quite easily. I hadn't already been in there, I promise you. And then we can just get a little drop of oil on there, or I've got some, I'll show you what I've got. Okay, I've got some of this Vulcan penetrating oil. Nothing special about this make. Any penetrating oil, it's a bit thinner than ordinary oil. And we can just literally put a little squirt in there and that'll solve that squealing fan issue. Job done on that. Right, so next, what should we do next? Yes, let's have a go at this pot. It was the, as always, it's the gain pot on the drive channel. I don't know why that pot is always tricky, but anyway, let's have a look at that. So about all you can do with these sealed pots is to remove the knob, and just a little lift with a screwdriver there will take that off. And I've had quite good success using some deoxit D5 just down the shaft basically. Just give a spray there and it runs down the shaft. You can usually feel the shaft get a little bit looser if it doesn't really matter about the shaft being loose. Some, you know, you lose a slight bit of feel, but it's better that than crackle, crackle, crackle. And 9 times out of 10, just if I put the deoxit there, 9 times out of 10, that's job done on that, because you can't get to them from the back. You can't spray in the back like you can with other pots. So work that backwards and forwards a bit. I can feel it's lost a little bit of its feel, which is okay, I don't care about that. And that tells me that the deoxit has got into the pot. It's much better to have a slightly looser pot, but one that's not crackling. So I think what we'll do now is power it up, connect the speaker, make sure that pot is now no longer crackling, and make sure the fan is not noisy. Let's check that part of the work so far. Okay, here we are back again. Fan's running beautifully smoothly. Let's put it on gain. Oops, squeeze. And still scratchy. Can you hear that? Now that might go with a bit of moving backwards and forwards. Let's turn down the. Still scratchy that. That treatment hasn't completely cured it, so I think I'll just try again. We don't have many options here, unfortunately. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So the second application, just a question of if we get lucky and it runs down the shaft. This is not the best way to clean a pot, down the shaft, just because it's a little bit hit and miss in terms of the stuff getting in there. There we go. Sorted. Yeah, that's fine now. Maybe it's a touch scratchy. No, that's not bad. That's fine. I think you'll agree a lot better than it was, so that's great. Right. So that's all good. Now we don't need to change the valves, they just last forever, these preamp valves. If you are servicing an amp like this yourself, one thing you could consider doing is paying some attention to these interboard connectors. They're an area of problem. Fortunately there aren't very many on this amp. I've seen Marshall JCM 2000s have dozens and dozens of these. So you know, what you could consider doing is just literally unplugging each one and plugging it back in again. Well, you know, what's that doing? Well, the answer is it's wiping the contacts, and if there's any corrosion or dirt on that contact, the mere act of unplugging and plugging it in again will get rid of that. And it doesn't take very long. You can go around with some deoxit if you want, but I don't think it's actually worth it. This wipes the contacts like that, just doing that, and that will stop you getting any issues. You don't need to do these. These usually pretty robust. And I'm holding the camera at the moment. When I put the camera down, I'll do this one here, and that'll be the job done on that. I'm going to give all of these jacks a spray of deoxit, and then work a jack plug in and out a couple of times just to clean those up, because I've said this many times on video, but in case you haven't seen it before, these effects send and return jacks here, look, where am I on the video? There we are, sorry. The effects send and return jacks there, the contact, if they're not used, which often they aren't, the contacts get dirty, and you get a bit of dirt under there or under there, and it breaks the link between the preamp and the power amp, and you get this intermittent thing. Sometimes the amp works, you give it a bit of a bang, it comes back, and you can never really work out why. It's okay for 6 months, and then it fails you on a gig, you have a couple of bangs and it sort of comes back, sort of doesn't, and that's quite often the problem with dirt on those jacks. So I will put a bit of deoxit on that. And as you can see, since I'm pointing the camera here, see this board is still quite dirty. The vacuum didn't really touch it, and that's because this dirt is very greasy, like that. Look. So I might give that a bit of a spray and get a toothbrush in there and just clean that up, but to be honest with you, it's perfectly fine. So let's clean those jacks, then I think we're pretty much done on this. So the process is quite simple. I often just put a jack plug in, that opens up the contacts, a little bit of squirt of deoxit on the inside, dump, dump. Work the jack plug in and out a couple of times, and repeat on the other jacks. Particularly attention to the FX send and return, the others aren't so critical. Job done on that as well. So that's the kind of basic service, if you like, on one of these amps. Right, I think we'll put that back in its chassis now, in the chassis back in the case, and we'll test it before we finally give it back to the customer. Well, seems to be okay. That pot's reasonably good. Etc. Seems to be good. Happy with that, and obviously not a huge bill for the customer as well. Very reasonable price on that. £850 plus VAT. I mean, you know, got to keep up the drug habit somehow. I think I'll leave it at that for now, and thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.